Welcome to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. I'm Jen Gaudet, your fearless host, entrepreneur, investor, and business strategist. Why are we here? Because iron sharpens iron. And when we bring industry leaders, disruptors, investors, and more to share what's working in business, and maybe even some of what's not, we all learn and grow. As a result, our businesses grow, and the ripple effect impacts not only ourselves, our teams, and their families, but also our communities and our world. You are in for a treat today because I have a very special guest. We're going to start the day with a question that'll sting a little. What if the reason your business feels stuck is because you're unclear on why it exists? Today's guest is here to fix that. Dr. Gary Sanchez is an international speaker. He's an author and founder of the Why Institute, creator of the Why Operating System, a framework used by top performing entrepreneurs, executives, and teams around the world to lead with purpose, outperform and scale with clarity. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Jen, thank you for having me. I've been excited to be on your podcast. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Listen, many leaders can recite their revenue targets, their pipeline numbers, their quarterly OKRs, but they still feel like the business is working and that something underneath is maybe a little malaligned. What is Why Operating System? Why do so many high-level CEOs and founders miss this piece of the puzzle?
Well, they've heard about it, right? If you ask almost every CEO, have you seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk? Have you read his book, Start With Why? Have you heard Tony Robbins? Have you heard? There's so many business gurus that tell you, you got to know your why, you got to know your why, but no one was ever able to help someone figure it out. And if knowing about something is interesting, being able to actually use it and implement it is so much more valuable. So essentially what the Why Operating System does is it takes that concept of why, how, and what, and it makes it actually doable, usable, scalable. In fact, yours is right there on the screen, I think, right now. So I'm happy to dive right into yours, or we could talk a little bit about exactly what it is that they're going to be seeing on the screen.
So why don't we do both all at once?
Okay,
Why don't
let's do it.
you talk about the why, how you get there, that what we're trying to identify here, and just use me as an example.
Yeah, perfect. So most people have heard about the concept, but haven't been able to do it themselves. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about is people don't know what they want because they don't know who they are. Help them figure out who they are, and it becomes infinitely easier to help them figure out what they want, right? Who first, and then what. So on the screen right now is your why, how, and what. So your why is to find a better way and share it. How you do that is by challenging the status quo and thinking differently. And ultimately, what you bring is a way to contribute and have value. So go ahead and read. You see where it says simple YOS right there?
So I've got really, really old eyes. Can you read that for me?
Let's see here. We've got, I believe that success happens when we think outside the box. How I do that is by seeking depth, breadth, and detail. And this is the wrong one for you. So this, what we want to do is switch that to the second one so that we can have that. This was yeah, there we go. Let's get Jen's up there on the screen so we can go through it. But essentially, what it does is gives you the language. Most people might have a sense of what their why is, why they do what they do, how they bring their why to life, and what it is people can count on from you, but they can't really say it. So it's very fuzzy. So sort of kind of thinking that maybe you know your why, not very valuable. Being very clear on your why, your how, and your what, super valuable. So if I were to simplify it all down to one word, what is the one word that the YOS helps you with? It's overcoming uncertainty, not knowing who you are, not knowing how to lead, not knowing who your team is, not knowing all those things about yourself. The YOS discovery will help you do that. And it takes about 7 minutes is all. So forever, Jen, people have thought, to find my why, I'm going to have to go sit in a dark cave for a week or walk by myself through Spain, or hire a bunch of therapists to help me try to figure out my why. Your why is already inside you, it's already there. You just need to have it uncovered for you to be able to see it and then use it. And that's what the software tool that I developed does for you. So in about 7 minutes and about 30 questions, there's over 4,000 questions, but you only have to answer about 30. It'll take you through finding your why, your how, and your what, and giving you the words to be able to say it. So if we can bring that back up, I know yours off the top of my head, that we could use as well. So would you rather me just say it out loud for your audience?
Just say it out loud. Say it loud and proud for me.
Okay. So, Jen, you and I have the same why, which is to find a better way and share it, right? We are always looking to make things better. We go to bed thinking about a better way, and we wake up thinking about a better way, and we cannot turn it off, and we are rarely satisfied. How you do that is by challenging the status quo, thinking differently, pushing limits. Who says we have to do it this way? Let's do it our own way. Let's make it fun, exciting, and different. And ultimately, what you bring is a way to contribute, add value, have an impact in other people's lives. You want to be that pebble that starts the ripple effect that goes on in other people's lives. How does that feel to you?
That's pretty much it. I don't know if you paid attention to the intro of my show, but it's always some sort of version of that ripple impact, especially.
Yes. And so, what most people do when they meet someone for the first time is, let's just say you and I had met right now for the first time. I would look at your hairstyle, earrings, what's in the background, what you're wearing, and kind of create a narrative around what I think I see. And that's who you would be to me. But I wouldn't know that the way you think is you're always looking for better ways. You're always looking to think outside the box, and you want to find ways to help other people have a bigger impact. And now that I know that, I know the language that you speak, I know what's important to you, I know what's not important to you. I know if let's say I were coaching you, I would make sure that what we coached you to do, the direction that you went, allowed you to live in alignment with your why, your how, and your what. So, Jen, if you pick a path where you get to find better ways, think outside the box, and help other people, would you enjoy doing that?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Right. You do it all day long for free if you could. And you probably have. And you probably do. I know you do, because that's how we met.
That's right.
But let's say we put you in a place where you don't get to find better ways. You don't get to think outside the box, and you don't feel like you're having much of an impact. You're just maybe sitting in a cubicle crunching numbers. How's that going to work for you?
I'm leaving.
You're leaving, yeah. And let's say I put you in that spot for a year, maybe 5 years. How about 10 years? How's that going to work out for you?
I think that would be horrible. I couldn't even fathom it.
And a lot of people are in that spot. And what happens over time is they start to think, well, what's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. Right? What's defective about me? Why can't I just be happy with this? It's because they're not living in alignment with the operating system that they're giving. And so that's why it's so critical for you to understand your own internal operating system, why you do what you do, how you bring that to life, and what it is people can count on from you. Because once you know that, once you know you, then figuring out what's your passion, what's your purpose, what's your direction, all of those things become so much easier. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I immediately go to, if I know very clearly and kind of articulate and communicate what that is for me, and I know that about every member of my team, then I will know how to communicate with them and put them in the right seat of the bus. Like a lot of what I do in the business consulting world is, okay, do we have the right team members? And are the right team members in the right seats on the bus? And often they are not. But this is an amazing tool to give us the same language to ensure that we're putting people in a position where they're going to succeed. And so, folks, if you're watching this, like, I strongly recommend you look into YOS, because this is a tool that can up level everything that you're doing. If you're now putting people and understanding what their why, how, and what is, and you're putting them in a position to succeed, it makes the sum of all parts of our team even greater. And so we're about to have to take a break. Gary, we have about 20 seconds. What is the biggest thing that breaks if we don't understand this and only lead with the what?
Then you have to rely on hope. I hope I put you in the right place. I hope this is what you want to do. I hope you'll have passion for this. I hope you're going to enjoy this. And hope is not a good strategy.
It's not a strategy, folks. Hope is never a strategy. We do have to take a brief break, but we're here talking about what do you need to do to identify your why? How do we audit your decisions to make sure that you're operating from that place of alignment and speaking the language that makes sense so that we can operationalize our purpose? And when we do that, it becomes unstoppable. If this lit something up in you, connect with me. Join the Power CEOs Facebook group where we can take these insights deeper with other high-performing founders. And for those who want to discover your YOS today, you can start, and we're going to share with you that after these important messages. Welcome back to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. Want more conversations like this? Watch Now Media TV live or on demand anytime, anywhere by downloading the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS. On the move, prefer podcast? Too. Catch that version at nowmedia.tv, where you can get business, lifestyle, culture, and more streaming 24/7. We are ready when you are. Without further ado, let's go right back into what we've been talking about today, folks. We've just uncovered how the why operating system gives you a personal roadmap for leadership. But what happens when your entire business is running on purpose? This is what separates growth from chaos. Let's take this from personal clarity to your hidden business advantage. And how does purpose become that system that keeps your culture, your messaging, your execution aligned as you scale? I've got Dr. Gary Sanchez with me, founder of Why Institute, here to show us how to turn that purpose into a strategic multiplier. Let's dive in, Gary. What are the first signs a scaling company is losing its identity? What breaks first? Where does that misalignment show up first? Is it in the customers? Is it in the team? Is it in the leadership? What breaks?
I would say it's the messaging. When you're clear on who you are and you're clear on how to articulate that, then the team becomes clear on it. But when things are fuzzy, when you're not sure, when you're uncertain, the team starts to hesitate. They're not sure, like what are we really all about? And so once the CEO, here's what typically happens, Jen, is I work with the CEOs, lots of different CEOs, and they get clear on who they are. And then they say, I got to have this for my team. And what happens is you create a matrix. And so imagine a matrix. On the left side, you have what's their name. The next column is what do they do? And then the next column is their why, the next one their how, and the next one their what. And very quickly, you'll be able to tell, do I have the right person in the right place so they love what they do? And there's such a big difference between being able to do something and loving what you do, right? So let's take you, for example. Your why was better way, your how was challenge, and your what was trust. So let's say you applied for a position in my company and you wrote on the application, I'm good with numbers, because you probably are very good with numbers. But so now I would say, wonderful, Jen is going to be our new bookkeeper. We are going to put her right over there in that cubicle, and she is going to crunch numbers for us all day because she's really good at numbers. So how would that work for you?
That would be the worst thing to do for me.
Exactly. And how long would you have energy for that?
Less than 10 minutes, I can already tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But if we took you and put you in a place where you get to find better ways, think outside the box, and be that trusted guide for the rest of the team, how would you like doing that?
Absolutely. Like it's a bigger way to impact. That's how to leverage my strengths along with what I want to be doing and how I operate.
Exactly. So you're going to have passion for what you do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams, right? Without passion, you give up. With passion, you persevere. So, how you create an inspired team that gets more done, loves what they do, stays with you longer, outproduces everybody else, is by putting the right person on the bus and in the right seat. And that's how you do it, by their why, their how, and their what. So you look at what is it you want them to do, and then is that the right why, how, and what, so that you know they're going to love what they do. And that's how you can build. That's what the best run companies do. And so what the YOS discovery does for you is it demystifies who you have on your team, so you can very quickly see, who do we have? Do we have the right people in the right place? Where are we strong? Where are we not so strong? As we continue to grow, who are we going to be looking for? What is the piece that we don't currently have? And how do we get the right person for that spot, so that we build an inspired team? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, I'm going to just like simplify this. Like, we're talking about team performance here, folks. When we know the why, the how, and the what of each of our team members, how everyone is interacting shifts. You have more collaboration. You're able to delegate and trust that you're delegating to the right person. And then it really clarifies your hiring decisions, because a lot of times we think we need to hire for a skill set, but actually we want to hire for the gaps in the purpose, the why, so that we know that the person who's coming in is going to really love what it is they're doing, and that's what accelerates everything else. So this is about making sure that we're not just matching skill sets, we're also matching the deeper motivations, the intrinsic motivations that people have. So let me ask you, Gary, because we're in a world of crisis right now, and there's a lot going on in the world. It's outside of our control, economically, technologically advancing, geopolitical challenges that we're facing, and there's so many crises happen. But let's talk about when crisis hits and we have to pivot. All of a sudden there's an AI disruption, there's a market crash, whatever is happening. What does it look like for us to stay rooted in purpose when we're under those kind of pressures without becoming rigid? Because we live in a business climate where flexibility is essential. So how does that fit in with YOS and what we're building?
Yeah, really, it's identity before strategy, right? It all goes back to knowing who you are. And if you don't know, you rely on hope. If you don't know, you just guess what direction you should go. But when you do know, clarity is king. So knowing who you are will help you find a path in today's world that you're going to love to do. So there are a lot of people right now pivoting, a lot of people uncertain of the future, uncertain of their future. So now is the time to gain the clarity on yourself, so that what you pick next is going to be something that you love to do. Yeah, when I think back, Jen, to when I was in high school, the worst question that my parents' friends could ask me was, "So, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Right? You remember that? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go to school? What do you want to major in? How the heck do I know? How was I supposed to make that kind of a choice when I was 17 years old? So most of us go off to college having no idea what we want to do if we go to college, and then we have to pick a major, and then we have to pick a path, and then we get involved in that career, and then we start accumulating things, right? Houses, kids, cars, spouses, all that stuff. And then we realize we didn't pick the right path. And so now what am I going to do? I have all these responsibilities. You have to wait for your kids to grow up before you can make that change. You can't just not provide. And so who we work with quite a bit are people that made a choice when they weren't sure who they were, got good at what they chose to do, and now feel trapped by the career they are in based on the choice they made when they were younger. And so the key, if you only get one thing out of all of this, it's you got to know who you are. Start with who are you before you try to figure anything else. And in today's market, today's world, today's climate, it's even more important. So that what you pick next is going to be something that you really want to do, that's worth your life in pursuing.
And so I really like that, and I know that we're getting kind of towards the end. So before we run out of time, how can people take this assessment? You mentioned the YOS. It's 7 minutes to take. How can people reach out to you to learn more about this, to find out what their why, their how, and their what is?
Great. Jen, all they really need to do is go to whyinstitute.com, whyinstitute.com, and it'll be right there for them. For your audience, if you want, I will give the why discovery to everybody for free. So if we can put a note in the show notes, we'll give you a link where you can take the why part of it for free. And that may be enough for you. If you want to continue, yeah, there it is right there. So if you want to take and discover your why, you can do that for free. If you want to add the how and the what, it's just a little bit of an upgrade, but you'll be able to get that clarity very quickly. So if you've ever thought to yourself, man, I wish I knew what my why was. I wish I knew why I was put on earth. What was I put here to do? This will help you do that very, very quickly. It will give you the words to clearly tell the world exactly who you are, so you know why you do what you do, how you bring your why to life, and what it is people can count on from you. So you have the clarity to move in the right direction even faster.
And I just want to reiterate, thank you so much for that, Gary. Folks, whyinstitute.com. I've done this, obviously. We talked about my results. And it really is important that we're able to articulate that and know that and be clear about that. Because when I talk about AI all the time on the show, when we decide what we're going to do or how we're going to leverage the new technology, we have to know ourselves and what it is we don't want the technology to take away or to be doing, because we need that level of clarity before we do an integration. For example, if we have to move in a different direction or pivot, we have to know that it's going to be something that we're going to have the energy to drive forward. Because as the CEO of our company, as the founder, or even as the investor who is active in our company or on the board, we have to be aligned so that we can be set for success in our growth. And that's really what this is about. We are going to move strong forward with this. Gary, thank you so much for your expertise. I really appreciate this. We do have to go, but thank you for your expertise today. And folks, check out whyinstitute.com. We will be taking a brief break, but we'll be back after these important messages.
I see Taylor jumping in, so that must mean it's time. Good to see you. Hi, Taylor.
Welcome back to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. We are going to shift gears just a little bit. Before the break, we talked about YOS and leadership. And now I want to talk about one of the biggest leadership questions of our time. What happens when the workforce changes faster than the education system built to prepare it? AI is not just changing how we work, it's changing how we learn, how companies hire, how leaders build talent, and how people stay relevant in a world where skills can become outdated almost overnight. Joining me for this discussion is Pardis Mahdavi. She is CEO and founder of MyUni, the world's first AI native university. She's an acclaimed author, educator, entrepreneur, and education futurist who's led at the highest levels of academia. And now she's building the model of the future for accessible, affordable, AI-powered credentials for students everywhere. Pardis, welcome to Power CEOs.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jen. It's an honor to be here.
So I'm just going to dive in. Most universities were built for a much slower world, a world where change came in decades, not quarters or even weeks. But AI has broken that clock. So talk to me a little bit about what education looks like when the workforce changes faster than curriculum.
Jen, you hit the nail on the head. Our workforce, our entire economy, our markets are changing at an unprecedented rate. Most universities were built for the industrial economy. And so typically traditional higher education wasn't built for speed. It was built for deep, long-term thinking, processing. And over time, for better or for worse, well, I think given our current market, many would argue for worse, what has happened is that we have seen the gap between learning and earning actually widen. And the numbers back this up. So this is the first time in American history where the generation that's coming, our children's generation, will be less educated than their parents. It is the first time in American history that you have 43 million Americans who have some college, but they've dropped out. And we're facing a $1.6 trillion student debt crisis. So one of the things I always say is that education should not be a debt sentence, and yet so many people are facing that. And it is the first time in American history where the United States is not only not in the top 5 or 10 in global rankings of higher education, we're not even in the top 20, Jen. 6 years ago, we were ranked number 4 in terms of global higher ed rankings. Today, we're ranked number 24. We've been replaced by Vietnam. So that just goes to show you, these are just some of the numbers that help us understand how education is failing America, but it's also failing the workforce. The Gallup poll has recently shown that employers really want people who have credentials of value, legible credentials that are ready for emerging fields and the emerging market. And what employers are reminding us time and time again is that unfortunately, the current curricula at universities is not built for this economy that is changing more rapidly than any time in the past in our history.
Yeah, and so you're at those are stark statistics. I didn't realize we were 24th, for example, and that's just quite frankly unacceptable in the world. Yes. But you've lived inside traditional higher education at the highest levels, and you've chosen to build something different. So let's talk a little bit about what is an AI native university? What does that actually mean? And what makes a university AI native versus just one that bolts on AI into the old model?
You know, I think the sort of simplest way to explain it is, remember there was a time when people taught mathematics without a calculator. And there were math teachers who were like, no, we're not teaching with calculators, you know? And then there was a period where it was like, okay, you could have a calculator if you needed to do X. Over time, and apparently that, you know, when you actually look at education historians, it took about 5 to 10 years, which in this particular economy and in this particular society, 10 years is unacceptable. That's too long. But over time, people actually started teaching with the calculator, that was the basis of which they were teaching mathematics. So AI native, what does that look like? That means we're not just teaching about AI or teaching how AI might be used in this particular field. We're actually using AI to do some of the teaching. Now, I want to be really clear. We're not replacing the teachers. We say we are human-centered, AI-powered. What does that look like? Our technology is didactic. It meets the students where they're at. It meets the learner where they're at. So it comes in and it diagnoses, okay, this is how Jen wants to learn Accounting 101. This is how Pardis wants to learn Accounting 101. So Jen, you and I might be in the same class, but you might be getting a lot of your course material through podcasts. I might be getting it through gamification. And our entry point might be a little bit different, but the technology is able to diagnose where we are, and then it can help actually to mold and remold the curriculum to meet the needs of these different learners. On top of that, what technology is now able to do is it's able to take the knowledge that, let's say you and I, let's say we're in a peer learning community, we are going to be putting knowledge into this course as well. So what's great about our technological advancements is that we're able to then take the knowledge that you and I are co-creating and use that to make the course even better. So in this way, we're taking a curriculum designed by a professor, designed by a subject matter expert. And again, that word faculty, that word professor looks really different. For instance, one of the degree programs we're building out is in food and beverage. And so we pair chefs who are top of their game with faculty experts in nutrition. And the two of them might build a class. Then the technology is able to build a curriculum around that and diagnose how you and I would learn best. On top of that, it would take what we're creating as we're turning in our assignments, the questions we're asking, to just keep making the class better and better.
I love that because, and I'm going to dive into my next question because I know it's on everyone's mind. And AI is evolving, technology is evolving. I mean, we're staring down, consumer quantum, for example, quantum compute. So as this rapid technology advances, um, it sounds like you're able to real time adjust the curriculum and stay as current as possible through that. But I'm gonna take you just a step back because many of us are integrating AI into our systems. We're either AI enabling or we're going to an AI native solution or building our own solutions in our own industries. So can you talk to me about how tech has changed since you first started this project? And really, what has accelerated in the past, 12 months or maybe 24 months, and how have you adapted to that? Because those of us who are building, it's changing faster than we can actually implement in a lot of areas. So how have you adjusted to that so that you can stay cutting edge and deliver the results that you want to deliver?
Jen, it's such a great point. Technology has changed so rapidly and it's continuing to change. I mean, the pace of change is only accelerating. And so one of the things we had to do was take a step back and say, okay, how can we continue to iterate? So not only now do we iterate on the knowledge, let's say that you and I are co-creating, but we actually iterate on the upgrades in technology. So we're constantly trying to make the platform, the learning management system, and the platform itself better and better. So as you and I are having this conversation today, interestingly enough, just a few days ago, Canvas, which is the largest LMS platform in the United States, had a nationwide shutdown, which many of your listeners are probably very familiar with. That was massive. This LMS was not able to sustain and support even the basic level of learners. What that tells us is that even the LMS, even the learning management system, the platform itself has to then take the existing knowledge about AI, quantum to your point, and use that to make the platform, not only the content, but the platform itself better. So what we had to figure out was, okay, not only can we, because we're no longer in the information economy, now we're in the learning economy. And these are two totally different things. So we're actually now having to think about how we learn and how we think, how we learn, how we think, how we experience. So not only are we using the technology to upgrade the content of what we're, putting out there, but we're also using the technology to improve the context or the learning management platform itself.
I really am fascinated by this. I'm doing this in a couple of different industries, not education. And, one of the things that I think people are getting wrong right now is they think that AI native means automatically cheaper, faster, and fully automated. But the reality is AI native doesn't mean we're fully automated. There's still parts in our process that require human judgment, human mentorship, human accountability. So how did you think about designing those very human touch points in as tech, and how are you continuing to ensure that those human judgment, human mentorship, human accountability touch points remain as you iterate?
It's a great question. That is the best case for engaged and experiential learning that I can think of. Nothing can substitute hands-on learning. So if we take the example of food, we can take a whole bunch of classes on, knife skills, preparation, theories around food ecosystems, nutrition, but until and unless we get into the kitchen and we start actually working with it, that knowledge, we're going to hit kind of a ceiling until we can start to actually code that knowledge onto our bodies. One of the things that we were really intentional about was the importance of learning communities, which I mentioned, because we know that peer learning is one of the most fundamental ways in which people internalize the learning. So, you could listen to a podcast, I could play a game, we could both do our reading, but it's actually the magic comes when you and I start talking to each other. I mean, just even think about this conversation we're having and many conversations you and I have had. I think about all the conversations you and I have had, that's only just made my thinking better and better and better. And so there's not really a substitute for that, right? You can kind of ingest information, but at a certain point, you need to start to actually work with it and mold it. And so one of the things that we built into all of our certificate programs were apprenticeships, which is, a little bit based on the European model. But, apprenticeships, we do require that every certificate program that people take, that they do at least one apprenticeship so that they can get that hands-on engaged experiential learning, that human design piece. And every single one of our courses has a peer learning component so that people are actually engaging human to human to do some of their assignments and work through the issues in the class.
Absolutely. And, we learn best when we teach, and when we have a conversation, we're able to share what we're learning and iterate like in a human to human way. So we do have to take a brief break. Folks, we've talked about why the old model is straining. We've talked about what the future of education is. After the break, I really want to get into where business and education should stop acting like separate worlds and start building talent in the workforce of the future together, coming up right after these messages. Welcome back to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. I'm Jen Gaudet, and I am here with Pardis Mahdavi, and we are talking all things future of work and future of education. Listen, AI isn't just changing work, it's changing the shelf life of skills. And that means companies can't sit back and complain about the talent pipeline that we helped to ignore. So, Pardis, I really want to dive into this because you're changing and evolving education, and that communication and that partnership with employers is so key. What should that relationship between employers and education look like now if we want a workforce ready for 2030, not 2010?
Look, that's a great question, Jen. When I first started this work, I was still a university president. I had served as university dean. I've been, at Pomona College, dean at the University of Denver, dean at Arizona State University, provost at University of Montana, president at University of Laverne. And I had a front row seat to why higher education was failing the students. The students were time and time again saying, I'm not learning what I need to know. You're not meeting my needs. And then I started to hear a lot more from the employers, and the employers were saying they're not trained in the skills that we need them to be trained in. And so I remember this defining moment for me. It was when I was president out in Los Angeles, and I had a conversation with a, very high level CEO. I was in YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization. I'd been involved. I'd gotten into YPO a few years before that. And, I'd started talking to big employers. And this particular employer happened to run a company where they were recruiting my students after their second year. So they were actually having our students drop out after their sophomore year to come work for them. And I went to them and I said, listen, what are you doing? You're taking my students off campus. You're having them drop out of college. They'll never come back and get a degree. This is a huge disservice that you're doing to them. And they said, you know what, Pardis? Even if I left them there for another 2 years, all that would happen is they would just go into further debt, but they wouldn't be any more ready to work for me. I would still have to send them to LinkedIn Learning. I would still have to send them somewhere to get the skills that I actually need them to know. And I remember thinking, well, this is ridiculous. We should actually be reverse engineering education. We should go to the employers and say, what are the skills that you need your employees to learn, to know? How can we start to actually build curricula from what the workforce wants? And so that's what I set about doing with my uni. I stepped down as president. I made a very difficult decision to do that after, making my way all the way up. Because I saw that higher education was not serving the students and it was not serving the workforce. And I thought, we can't keep going like this. The numbers were backing it up. We were all doing a lot of hand wringing. And I thought, you know what, let's reverse engineer. So the way that we work at my uni is we actually go to the employers and we say, what are the skills that you're missing? What is the kind of certification that you are looking for? And one of the things that we now know, the data show, again, the Gallup poll, and there's numerous studies that have been done, that employers do want credentials. They do want credentials of value. They don't want just a LinkedIn Learning certificate or, you did some screenplay classes at masterclass. They do want a certificate, but do they need a full 4-year degree? Not necessarily, because what they're identifying is that a lot of the 4-year degrees that currently exist are not meeting their needs. So we took a step back and we said, let's go with the Lego block model of education, stackable credentials. where you can get a certificate in any number of things that, again, our courses are tethered to what the employers are asking for. And then you can stack those towards the kind of training and education that you really need.
I think this is fascinating, and this makes a lot of sense, especially for people who are entering university. But let's now shift to what's happening in real time. There are very many positions that are vulnerable because they're heavily task-based, they're repeatable, and AI is actually, and like automation is replacing these jobs. They're not coming back. These people now don't have a landing place, but they still have many years of runway. So how do we, as leaders of our organizations, how do we help those workers who, let's face it, they're not engineers, they're not coders, they're not 22 years old. They may be 40 years old and still have quite a bit of work. They have experience, but they're just not finding relevance during this shift. How do we help them? What does that look like? And how do we take responsibility and ownership of this piece, so that we can protect our economy? Like, let's protect our economy and make sure that these folks have a landing place.
Absolutely. I think the name of the game there, Jen, is upskilling. So, one of the statistics that sticks with me, is that the students who graduate this May will have between 15 and 30 jobs in their lifetime, half of which haven't even been invented yet. So I think that this moment is really indicative of what's going to be even coming down, even at a more accelerated rate. So I think upskilling is going to be the name of the game. What does that mean? So let's say you're 40 years old, you got a bachelor's, 20 years ago in something, but maybe that something, to your point, doesn't exist. Or maybe you didn't get a bachelor's and you were working in a particular industry where you didn't need it. Upskilling is going to be so, so critical. As the market moves, bends, tucks, rolls, we're going to need all of us, every single one of us, you and I included, we're going to need to keep upskilling. Now, how we do that, the intentionality and the rigor with which we go into that, that's going to be the question. So right now, you and I, we've both seen a proliferation of like AI courses, but what's an AI curriculum that's actually been accredited and that's going to be relevant to, let's say, the next job that somebody wants to get? The other thing that I think is important is that diagnostic and didactic component of our technology. It's really important to know where you are now so that you can figure out where you need to go. And I think that that's one of the things that I hear a lot from people, in all different age ranges, is they say, I don't even know how employable I am. I don't even know what I don't know, right? I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know how to upskill. Again, that's where I think our technology is really helpful, because it can help you identify, okay, here's where I am. Here are some pathways where I could go. And then here is the different kind of choose your own adventure, Lego block map to get you there.
So for the business leaders watching, what is the one move they should make in the next 90 days to future-proof their workforce?
I would actually have them do diagnostics on all of their employees, and we can help them with that. I think that, business owners should absolutely be doing diagnostics to figure out where they are and then where their team is. I recently spoke to a business owner who had more than 40,000 employees, who has more than 40,000 employees. And she shared with me, we're probably going to have to cut like 10,000 of them, but I don't know who I would cut. And I also don't even know who I need to upskill, who I need to reskill. And, one of the things I said to her was, look, we can help with that, and the other thing is, if you are going to let 10,000 people go, it would be helpful to, for them to know where they are and what are some of the avenues that they can pursue in order for themselves to upskill.
Yeah, I think that's really a responsibility that all of us need to take. And I know that it's an ethical one for me. If we're feeding families and we know this is coming down the pipe, then we have a responsibility to help set our people up for success. I mean, it's a two-way street.
That's right.
So we're getting quite kind of to the end, and I don't want to miss this opportunity. How can people who are watching reach out to you if they would like? Maybe they're a company and they would like to do a diagnostic. Maybe they're looking at how do I upskill and not miss the mark on that and make sure that I'm future-proofing my workforce. Like, how can people reach out to you to learn more?
Well, so you can go to www.myuni.org to learn a little bit more about MyUni. And then, just for your listeners, Jen, I don't usually do this, but I will invite you to go to my website, www.pardismahdavi.com, and you can directly get in touch with me there. I would be so happy to talk with you. We're so excited about what we're doing. We are just on fire about bridging the gap between talent and opportunity and bridging the gap between learning and earning. We are just like, this is our moment. So reach out to me. I can't wait to have the conversation with every single one of you.
Thank you so much for that. And so let me ask you, as we think about future proofing, if we get this right, what becomes possible for both founders, businesses, and for workers? And then conversely, if we get it wrong, what breaks first?
Great question. Well, I think what breaks first, let's start with the bad news. I think if we get this wrong, we start to face massive, massive shortfalls in the workforce. We start to look at an economy that is only spiraling downwards, and we continue to see education rankings plummet, which to me, and I think, you and I've talked about this, education is the foundation for a healthy and thriving democracy. And so the fact that our education system is in such crisis, to me, is one of the biggest national security threats that we are not talking about. So I do actually think this is a really critical issue. What can the future look like if we get this right? Learning becomes part of our ecosystem so that we're not siloing learning and work. Right now, we have this notion, you go to school, this sort of artificial 4-year degree, and then you go and get a job. I don't think we can think about things that way anymore. This upskilling moment, this lifetime learner, it's not a catchphrase anymore. I think all of us are going to have to keep learning as part of our ecosystem that helps us all continue to grow and level up, which ultimately I think is going to lead to the kind of social transformation that we're all hoping for.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise here to us and our viewers today. I appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jen. It really has been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. And you, yes, you've been watching, you've watched, we talked about YOS, we talked about diving deep into how to operationalize that and improve our leadership. And then we talked about the future of education, and not just education, but upskilling and reskilling our employees, our workforce, so that we can continue to be relevant and real and position our businesses for success and also our teams for success in the future. I encourage you to take one action step based off of what you heard today. I don't care what it is, but take one action step. Maybe it's diving into your why. Maybe it's reaching out to Pardis and learning how you can upskill your team. But that action needs to be taken now, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, because when we take action, that's where the forward momentum comes. And after all, that's what we're after here. We want to all learn and grow together. We want our businesses to grow so that we can create the future we want to experience. Without further ado, we will be here, same time, same station next week. So until then, win today, win this week, and we'll see you next time.